what you do is called Klangsteine soundstones, isn't it? But where does that originate from? What's the history of Klangsteine?
Like sound in stone has a very old history. Like there are even pictures of monkeys hitting stones. So by working on stone, you have to find that it has sound properties. And where it was found, it's probably like very early in history and development of mankind. Humans discovered that a stone can sound. So it's accompanying human history and perception since a very long time. And through that knowledge, men were able to find new sounds all around. If you then hit different stones, you find different sounds, and that's somehow goes through all history of mankind.
And why do you think they did that?
Because these sound properties you only find in stone. Like there's hardly any material that has this specific sounds. So each material has its own properties. If you hit on wood, for example, that most probably only find that sounds you only find in wood. So really high and sharp and clear sounds you find in metal kind of things, but metal doesn't exist, only is to be found in stone and has to be worked out. So surely it was found first in stone, and each quality of stone has different sound properties. So in finding new kinds of stones or different kind of stones, you find also different kinds of sound properties.
And why do you think the ancients banged stones? Was it for the musical properties? Why do you think they did it?
Yeah. That's maybe that's an individual thing also. Like you what is like your build up on religion or myths or whatever is like sort of a thing of the group. So but I think as many things were not being able to explain, so most probably the ancient people thought there are some ghosts talking to them or things like that. So it had most probably some kind of mythological build up or idea.
So you think they possibly played them in like rituals and masses or whatever it would have been, gatherings back in the old days? Because you've got things like Stonehenge and all those Neolithic sites.
Yeah, but that's way later, I would say.
Okay,
This is where when humans already had a lot of idea about sounds and were able to create and to work with sounds. But way earlier it was then to discover like men or all different people were moving around from site to site, and so they knew there are certain sites that have amazing sound properties, and they probably spent some times there, and that were maybe the ancient sites of perception or of having fun, like. So you could like hit on stones. You could there's also wall painting often found close to so-called rock gongs, and so I think that's probably like the I don't know how you call it, like fun parks maybe. You know?
Okay, stone fun parks.
It's like old
stone banging fun parks.
Yeah, stone banging fun parks. Like or stone banging was a part of it, you know.
Okay.
Because you have all kind of different acoustic properties like echoes, and if you, for example, come close, like you shout at the stone wood, it answers. But if you go closer than around 15 meters, suddenly the echo is gone. So you go closer and then you bang the stone and it answers again. So these kind of tricks of perception or physical acoustic tricks surely inspired or impressed people.
And maybe they thought it was some sort of magic back then, you know.
Most probably. Nowadays we can explain. We know there's sound, there are waves, there's acoustic in general. So nowadays we can explain like why it sounds like this. But still, I meet a lot of people who never heard a stone sing. So they are also many times think it's some kind of trick or what could be also seen as magic then.
Moving on from that, like I guess like your version.
But it's not finished yet, you know, because the history is somehow very very huge. Like and it starts like if you look at history of stone, let's say stone perception. Goes from like very early to nowadays, and in between you have so many steps. It surely was lost many times, or let's first discovered and lost again many times. So and each time it was discovered in a new way and also worked on it in a new way, lost again and rediscovered. Now also nowadays that's the case. Like somehow mankind had to rediscover what was already there, just lost on the way.
So you would agree that like playing stones being the oldest instrument in human history?
Like together with whatever, like a hollow trunk. Like a hollow trunk, you hit it and you have also some bong sound. So it's like I think it's like part with of the whole discovery of acoustic properties you find in nature. Like Bernie Krause is also discovering the biophonic properties, and surely through imitation, like hearing, thinking about it, imitating it. That's like part of a whole bigger thing, you know. And there surely the stones played also a huge role.
A stone being played in its perfect environment would be outside, right?
That's probably the ancient together then with caves, where also humans lived, and depending on the geometry of the space, you have then again even stronger experience, because the sound does not travel away. Let's say it's like captured, reflected. Maybe even the whole cave is getting into vibration. You may even feel the ground vibrating. So there you have then the combination or the coming together of the different levels of perception, like the visual, the auditive, and even the haptic or body experience of vibration.
Interesting. So as you said earlier, I think there's many things going on with stone playing. There's the banging, there's the entertainment, there's the sort of ritual element of it, and maybe there is this vibrational thing too. That would be rubbing stones, would it? I guess.
Yeah, like you like to get one standing sound. You can hit fast something big but you don't, like normally you don't get it as a standing wave, like or as a vibrating difficult to say, but but the terminology in that is not not very clear. But through rubbing, you can get the sound in the stone into sound or into vibration, and that permanently through like sure if your decision is to modulate it in the way that it stands, that it vibrates, you have that strong or can create that strong feeling of vibration.
So obviously you've done an awful lot of research, years of research on all this stuff. To your knowledge, when was the first time instruments, do you think, were rubbed to, or things were rubbed to create sound?
Yeah, this part of archaeology is not well worked on. There's some hints that rubbing played also a role in ancient cultures. It's just very difficult to prove, because you polish a stone and the polishing goes. Like you have difficulties proving that it was polished. You have some kind of these so-called cylindric lithophones that show some signs of polishing. So, and even like maybe also some pillars in Indian temples that were polished and then rubbed by many people and brought into vibration, so then the whole temple would vibrate. There are hints, let's say, but it maybe in the future some people get their mind around and will research it more deeply, but still only hints.
Are there people out there actively doing this research?
I know some people that have their mind around but did not publish anything, and and also as hitting is like the first very easy thing to get. Like if you want to create sound, you hit it. Rubbing somehow is maybe strange even or just not very common. Like sure you rub, but and also maybe the connotation is not the thing people put in a musical context, let's say. And you know that, for example, if you rub the wine glass, there you get sounds and you have rubbing. Then also, if you look in history, for example, the glass harmonica by Benjamin Franklin, that was also like a friction ideophone, you call it, after the Hornbostel sax systematic. But it was not really recognized in the time. Like Gladney also developed his own instruments, like the euphone and the clavicylinder, and but they use glass. And glass has a very sharp kind of tone, and so also in my personal feeling, it doesn't sound very nice or even make some kind of tension. It's very difficult to catch scientifically, and that most probably led also to the condition that it was not recognized by all our artists, or by some even by Mozart it was partially recognized, but then it was questioned if it even may be harmful.
You just said about how like glass rubbing is quite a harsh sound. So the stones that you play, how would you define that sound? I mean, I know there's a lot of different stones doing a lot of different pitches and tones, but generally speaking, how would you define them?
It's even in like the quality of stone, even if they look the same and they're geologically the same, they have different qualities of sound. Let's say there are small nuances, some more clear, some more you say nasal, yeah. Ah, okay. Some more clear, some more nasal, like a little bit blocked, or where the sound cannot travel that fast. In some stones, you hear it traveling inside the stone, what you don't have in other ones, and so there are small differences that nowadays don't play a major role in the timbre discussion, as surely also the stone is like a little bit above and fundamental of that discussion.
And I guess there's not many people playing stones in that situation anyway, is there?
More and more. Like, we spread the word since 25 years, you know.
So how many stone players do you think there are in the world right now?
Between 50 and 100 maybe.
Okay.
50, so around that.
And are they in Europe or literally everywhere?
It's slowly spreading. So I was in India, brought it there now 10 years ago. Some people from America who also hang out in South America. Now a sculptor from Colombia, and like the lithophone way of playing, like hitting and lithophones, that's in many places to be found. Also, this like once was coined rock gong. You find it also all over the world. So it's there. Let's say. Just again, rubbing is a little bit far as a practice from what we do normally, and that's probably the case that it needs more time. Let's say.
In the sense of, you know, these like 50 or 100 people maybe who are in the world playing the Stones, is that because they saw what you were doing and then were interested in it and got a Stone and played, or is there other people in the world doing a similar thing?
I think as I don't know all people who do it, and there are maybe also way more than I know, so that's surely possible, and you have a long history of the let's say modern practice of playing Stone, as for example Elmar Daucher already started in the 70s and had quite success also here in the south of Germany, and all kind of community sports, sculptures and things. So that inspired all musicians, all kind of people who started and building themselves. But normally they are musicians or they are sculptors. So combining the both, that somehow never really happened. And because if you look how these sculptures that Elmar Daucher sold in the 80s are treated nowadays, they're more treated like sculptures. I was visited once and asked if I could play it, and they even prohibited. So it's this thing that maybe humans have the concept of sculpture in mind, and then see a sound sculpture and treat it as a sculpture. And that's somehow the practice of playing was then more developed, introduced by my father. And also when I was young, that was what was interesting for me. As a 13-year-old boy, that was the most interesting instrument I found around, you know. And so I liked surely to play that and to try it and looked for the sounds and rub there and rub here and wow, there's a new sound coming. And when my dad got his band, oh wow, this sound wasn't there before. And so it was like a co-creative process but somehow manifested my action nowadays.
How did your father come across it? I mean, did he just stumble across it, or how did that happen?
He worked on Stone and sound in the beginning of the 90s with one poet, and they went to a cave here in the south, and where they worked on the relation of speech, cave, stone, and music. So and with that in the media, and one gallery then came across it, and they had a stone from Elmar Daucher, but Elmar had died like around 3 years before. So they had nobody to play it, and I asked my dad, and he said like sure, and went there, tried it the first time, and it wasn't letting him go. So he came back and asked if I want to join him to Switzerland. We went in around 92 to the Alps, collected some stones and took them home for cutting, and that were like the first steps.
How long have you been playing the Stones now, Hannes?
Oh, 24 years.
Wow. Do you think you've mastered it?
No, surely not. Because with each form, you have new things to master. Totally new playing techniques. Like the whole movement has to change. So with each form, you have to again master it. And as in the same time, also, I'm not also the master of playing of each form, because if people then bought a stone in the past and they play this stone for a very long time, sure they get better than me in that. Like sure, if I would play one stone all my life, I'm very good at that one. But as I develop and play different kinds and try, and also don't have time to play every day or any time one stone, I'm not the master of playing on one stone. Let's say it's more like a diverse thing.
Would you say then that every stone is like a unique instrument in its own right? I mean, grouped into the sound stone, but it would be a unique instrument within itself.
Yeah, each like it's like somehow instrument and stone or sound sculpture. So, and each one has its own properties. So you have like no vibration, you have lots of vibration, you have strong sounds, you have deep sounds, you have high sounds. This very much depends on the shape.
How long have you been making them for? Is a sort of similar amount of time?
Now 10 years.
Did you have the skills to do that, or did you go to college and learn some sculpting and some cutting, or did you just?
No, I started it. Somehow I always like to do things with my hands, and I worked a lot with the angle grinder on my own. And as I'm the son of a composition, let's say my perception since my youth developed. I was dragged into opera and concert halls and had slept every night with music breaks, pupils having to play till 11 o'clock. So sound was all around. It was, for example, making thunderstorm with all my friends at the birthday, So music was an expression, and not a corset, let's say, not a totally structured thing in whatever means or whatever it contains. So and when the stone sounds then came, I recognized from the beginning it is like, wow, the clearest, the strongest sound. You feel the vibration, and that then somehow changed or shaped my perception. And then, as it's probably most normal for every child, you have to do your own thing for some years. And after that phase was coming to an end, I was looking like what is happening also, what is going on in the field, let's say, and as through that perception, I then saw not much is new is happening. Like people that are active in the field are somehow overdoing the same thing, like a way of it's not really copy and paste, but it's copy with some changes and paste it and put it together. But where's the somehow new thing, And as I think the new lays in detail, as most probably all sounds are done, and there's not much to be done new, or that's possible to do new, because there is almost everything. So it most probably lays in the detail. As I thought, okay, you have these huge sculptures with lots of very strong sound, but many times that only overwhelms people, and is most probably too strong. So my idea was also like, sure, you have a lot of possibilities going in the small things, and as I knew how to play, that you have the shape of the hand, you have the shape of stones, you have angles, and corners and things, so many possibilities to do new things and to go in detail.
The stones that we've got here around us in the studio, where is all that stone coming from?
Mainly from India right now. Like, okay, from Italy, from Switzerland, from Iran, and from India.
Okay, and what's the logistics of actually getting them stones? Do you go there and pick them, or do you go online, or I mean, how does that even happen?
They are all like in the history, there were all kinds of ways.
Okay.
Like you go there, you find it, somebody tells you, you get brought, you have a tip, you just go and try, you like. all kind of different ways. Let's say there's not one way of doing it or having it done.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my head around the process. So, like, you might just turn up somewhere and there's a huge lump of rock, and it's just like, okay, that will work, and then you get it shipped home. Do you?
This is like that at the end, you know. If normally, like, I find a stone, then or nowadays, and go whatever, as I'm always looking for stone and trying and being in whatever sculptures places or stone selling places, and then I try and hear, this has good qualities, and then I found more about it, and then I may start with a small piece. And it always also depends how, because in stone manufacturing, like, not always you can get one piece, you know, but sometimes you can get one piece, and then depends, can this piece tell something about it or not, like, because as I know it, the same quality of stone or the piece from the quarry can sound or can't.
Let's say you go to somewhere and you see a piece of stone that you like the look of. Can you tell how good the sound quality might be just with the big piece of stone without cutting the lamellas in? I mean, can you kind of guess that it might be good?
Yeah, you can, and sometimes you can't. You know, for sure. If they're all manufactured in the same way, you can see in the structure sometimes that this may sound well. You can see the composition, and but also with color or composition or whatever, you cannot guess the structure. Like, are the crystals well connected or not? How is all the, I don't know how it's called, crystal Gitter in this, it is in German, and that plays a major role through the chemical composition, and how the crystals are interlocked, and that then sound can travel fast or gets blocked. Because Jan Kuhl, he is a geology professor emeritus from Munich University, Ludwig Maximilian University, and he had a project running the last years researching why different stones sound different, and he then made an how is it called? It's difficult with English now, but he in a nanometer or in the micrometer, he cut the stone and checked on the Grenzflächen in German, like it's the intersection between the crystals, that they even depending on temperature can be like a small vacuum, and so also temperature plays a major role, because the hotter it gets, this gap gets smaller, so each crystal is better interlocked, and the sound can travel faster.
So how many stones do you think you've made?
Oh, good question. Like concepts or stones themselves?
Stones in existence?
It depends what you can consider a stone sculpture or not. Because some were also created in a co-creative model, and I always need help, you know. Like I don't have the big machines and all that, and it also depends if you consider one of these small ones also a stone, you know, or if it starts at a certain size or whatever. So that or if you even consider whatever a round blade as a sound sculpture, so that makes it quite difficult to say a number, you know. And Judy, I also order sometimes things, you know. So this I have made thing, you know, is difficult to answer, let's say.
100?
Yeah, probably more. And where I when my person took part in it, let's say. And stones that I where I could develop the concepts, and they are then made without asking me or things, they are probably way more than.
How do you approach making the stones, like the shapes? What's your thought process behind that?
It depends where you want to end up to, you know. In the beginning, it was as I knew how to play. I knew what are the difficulties of playing with the old, mainly square, let's say edgy shapes, you know. That you cannot, for example, easily travel from the top to the side. That you have somehow difficulties playing, and so through having round forms, that was first thing I asked my dad. I told him, like, listen, Klaus, I have to make round shapes, you know, and that was somehow the approach through like in the first step through playing, like, or the change of shape, considering being easier to play or differently to play. So that was the first thing, and then and through that all different kind of application evolved. There was then the therapy developed, and sure, we had a lot of concerts, so that was developing. New stones came, and so also sure the go through or the conceptual idea changed also, and through not only differences in playing, but also then differences in insulating them, like how to let the vibration travel, how getting different sounds you want, and then sure you have. This is what I do with Juan Carlos Prada, a sculptor from Colombia who lives in Canada, where we have like an interaction or communication between sculpture and sound sculpture. Because sure, I think about sounds and playing, and then comes the shape. So what some shapes may say or convey on a sculptural level, or have create different association in people, is not meant, you know, because it's like the focus is on sound, and then later comes or then the form is there, and it may speak as a sculpture something else than, or something that is not intended, because the main focus is sound.
Okay, you kind of just answered my next question, because the next question was going to be, you know, are they as much art pieces as they are musical instruments? But you've just said, for you, instrument comes first, the sound comes first, and then the shape. Yeah.
Yeah, depend. If you want to do in the sound sculpture, then sure, the sound comes first, and then you have aesthetic questions. For example, that if you use wood, the best is natural wood. Looks the best, but sound-wise, sure, they are mainly black, because this black kind of protonic from deep down of the earth stones, they have the best sounds. They had the most heat, the most pressure, so they're very condensed and very strong in comparison to other stones. And so surely, if I want to do a well-working sound sculpture, I have to use that, you know.
The more elaborate shapes, like the tulip and whatever you call that, the dolphin, are the sound properties of them a lot different to the square ones? You know, I guess like the more elaborate the shape, the more elaborate the sound, or does it not work like that?
No, the basic is the stone, like the sound qualities of the stone, and then that in that time the concept was of taking natural forms, and then sure I know what works well and what doesn't, so I communicate with the shape and put it in a location in space where I give the fundamental blade, the standing or the stand, and the cuttings. That truly then has a huge effect on the sound. And then I try to get diverse sounds through, because there's no use in having only some. And then they're sometimes more difficult to play, or way more difficult to handle. Let's say they over, I don't know the right word, überfordern in German. Like if you can't handle them because they're too complex, how would you name that?
Well, yeah, I think just that. Yeah. So hard to handle. Yeah.
Hard to handle or too complex, and then suddenly you have so many lamellas and so many possibilities, and then it very much depends on the form of your hand also, or how able you are to change the hand, because the very complex is when you have to put the vibration on one point while moving, and then so as the shape is always different, you have to change that always. And that's if you try to do that consciously, that's hard to do. You have to somehow learn it, and you just have to do it.
How is the sound actually created? It's vibrations, of course, but how does, some technical knowledge on that?
Like you have a stone, and you have the lamella. So the lamella is stiff, but elastic also. So if you can like hit it, then sure you have the impact of the hit and the sound that comes. If you want to module it, you have the polished surface and your hand, plus water. And the water has properties of adhesion. So on very short distances, some molecules of water can build a bridge. You know it from, for example, a plastic plane on the ground. And if it's dry, the wind just takes it away. But if it's wet, you have a hard time getting it off the ground. That's the force. And this force always, you have your hand on the surface. The water always builds a bridge, some molecules, and that gets loose again in like very short amount of time. So if you move with water your hand on the stone, it glues and lets go, glues and lets go. And depending then on the surface of your hand, you get then the different sounds. Like with the more rough surface, you get the high sounds, and with the soft surface, you get the deep sounds.
Are the stones tuned to a specific scale?
You can do that, as you can tune them as you like, but the positive thing about the stones is that it allows way more harmonies, let's say, or way more consonants. Because in like the normal instruments, in the classical definition, you have interference of overtones if you play, for example, tones that are very close to one another. And that creates dissonance. Here you have a pure tone, so without overtones. So you just have a frequency or a tone. And if so, you can't have this interferences of the overtones. So suddenly you have way new or new possibilities of consonants that are just yet not really discovered. So it makes sure you can like stick to the overtone concept of let's say normal music and harmonics, but as you have way more possibilities to explore, that's also what should be done. And I don't see much sense in like pressing it in the old concepts, as why should not the new be explored? And in this sense, you can like work out your known harmonies. You have in the stone, you have a C, you have whatever, but you have also like very slight differences. and also the interferences, so we call them pulsation. Here becomes an aesthetic element, because you can play with them. You can make them faster. You can like get them stronger, and they don't sound bad or unharmonious or whatever. There's just something new to hear.
Are there any sort of specific techniques for playing other than wetting the hands and rubbing it?
You have all kind of possibilities of movement. You can like move even. You can alternate. You can with two hands do sounds. You can go up on the top, or on the side, and so surely depending on the shape of the stone, that's the basic of music. You can even say, and so also of the techniques of playing. Like surely you play the violin and the cello differently, but it looks pretty much the same instrument, only the size differs, and somehow it's similar there.
If you were collaborating with a composer or a piano player, how might that collaboration work? How would someone work with you?
Professor Dr. Helga de la Mortabo, who wrote the sound art book in the 90s, she said that the strength of sound art is to be able or to fit in everything, but not to belong in nothing, and that's somehow the case. For example, in theater once in Dresden at the Staatsschauspiel, I was the only tone, and there is the positive thing that as you don't have overtones in the stone, voices who have overtones, as they are composed out of like strings and the sound air pillar, you hear the voice and the stone in the same time without that they bite each other. So that's one positive thing you can use, and in that cooperation that was very interesting. He was very open, like the person responsible for sound, but that was interesting. With, let's say, traditional musicians who come from overtone music, it's sometimes a little difficult because they are trained to play in their tonalities, and things that don't work with overtone music can work with the stone, but they learned to like somehow understand it, not in the way and somehow they have to relearn to accept it. That was somehow a problem I had, because that pushed me to decide that I have to somehow fight or have to defend that it's possible, and it gives sometimes a difficult time, as they just think, oh, that's horrible, and you can't do that, and I think like why not? Like it's new, but it's not bad, just like not known, and but can be done, and normal musicians have then difficulties with that.
How do you follow a score or like some predetermined piece of music? I mean, is it possible to sit with you and write a score and then go and recreate it, or is every sort of performance unique in its own way?
Yeah, out of perception or matters of space, it's always different. Like out of my perception or my view, you may be able to repeat the same notes, but the same effects in space and of perception you never create again, because in some places the floor is vibrating and in others not. So sure, out of a score thinking or like a pure tonal thinking, it may be the same, but actually it's not for the recipient. And so one part is the stones have every cent, let's say, like every micro step, and you can get a normal C or D or whatever, and you can also repeat that. Only you need more time because you move a lot of matter. So you get one lamella into sound, and then you need your time to jump to the next. The one you played is still vibrating, because if matter is in movement, it's still in movement. It needs some time to calm down. So you somehow make slow music. As also there's the relation with James Turrell, maybe with slow art, or slow art, light art, let's say. So that's slow tonal art.
If we were going and doing a stone recording now, what would that best practice be? How might we mic it? Where would we record it?
Oh, you push me into a quite fundamental question, and this is somehow maybe we can say the difference between music and sound art, or no, even it also in the sound art discourse you have AV, like audio visual perception, and that's the main thing nowadays, and that's somehow always missing. And also now in the video, what we do, we have the visual and the auditive, but we're missing all other levels of perception, body in space, like Bonti put it, or like or feeling the vibration, smelling, all these things, and so making a converse, let's say, is always a limitation. And in like the old times, or some years ago, for me the stone was in the center. So there my dad and me, we did the Do on the Rocks CD, like now 6 years ago. Was the first CD with only stone being used. And there or that was somehow the outcome of many concerts we had, and because you miss so much if you record it or conserve it, that hold me always back from doing CDs, doing recordings, doing videos and all that, because it was always okay, I convey something, but it's never what it really is. So somehow the moment of playing, of showing people, of sharing that, feeling the vibration, that's the real thing, and that brought me even to the idea of putting some warnings on up front every video and CD, to say like, hey, wait guys, you may listen something, or even see, but there's much more.
You would want people to just experience the Stones live, and as you just said, a recording is a very simple reflection of something very complex, right?
Yeah, maybe in an ideal world there would be spaces where then people somehow start a process of getting in touch and learning, and that's maybe the most difficult problem nowadays, as we are living in a time where everybody thinks they anyway can already do it and want to consume it fast, but that's somehow the opposite of what the thing needs. You need to take your time, you need to prepare yourself, and then you are also on the right spot or the right place to calm down and to be able to somehow accept the slow music, and you will be able to discover way more than if you like rush through. And as in the acoustic history, somehow the rubbing or this was missed out. There's a blank space, and this is about the time now to fill up that space. But it's sure, as people think everything is discovered and done, there's not so much space left, let's say, and only through direct discovery, direct experience, this space like slowly gets its place.
You mentioned James Turrell earlier, and I think it's true, like to go and see a James Turrell piece, it's not like going into an art gallery and just looking at a picture. You have to sit there for hours to experience it, how it was meant to be experienced. And I guess this is the same, other than you can play for hours, I guess.
Yeah, it's maybe not for hours, but it's maybe more a thing of attitude, because like listening too long is also maybe not the right thing. Especially if you hear it for the first time, I would suggest you start slowly, like especially playing, because it's quite intense. You have a lot of matter very close to your body, and this brings all your body, all the liquids, everything in movement. And it can be you can't sleep in the night because you are too much in movement, you know. So it's, as I said, more I think an attitude thing, because that and also that you need to know the conditions. For example, if your hands are full of fat and you don't want to listen, or that you should wash your hands, as I have experienced quite some times, so then people think I'm whatever arrogant or know it all better, blah blah blah, and but actually it's like the basic preparation to be able to get in contact and communication with the stone, and then it doesn't need to be lots of time. It's more to calm down, to come, and also not to try to get out as much as possible and press hard and all these things. That's the opposite of what you need to do. You need really like calm, let go, respect the fine tones, not press hard, and then you will have a positive outcome.
This is a question I've asked other people before, but like, when do you know it's finished?
Oh, yeah, different approaches. Like as a foundation, you have the sound sculpture, so you have possibilities, and we have to deal with what is there. So you have to have somehow limits of composition, the limits of your instruments or your sound sculpture, and then there's also tonality that doesn't sound nice. So sure, it's about music is then most probably okay. There's some music that should torture or is there to that shouldn't be beautiful, but as I try to show the beauty of a new thing, it's that was my first approach. It's like sure, like being able to give an access, that people somehow understand that it has beauty, and not go right away to the limits of what is compositionally possible and very fast and but to like each sculpture that is there, to present it in a beautiful way that people can understand it, can take it, and from that place on you can go then on to more complex compositions, to new tonalities and things. But as I experience, I think especially people who have never heard it before, they need to have some kind of entrance. Then later on, if you heard a lot, you may not like the first thing you heard, what is maybe more simple and gives you that entrance. But it very much depends on the state of the audience. As also in the concerts with my dad, I then felt okay, now he's going to the limits, and if I now also go to the limits and do a complex composition and show how amazing things you can do with one sound, people will go, or somehow I have a hard time, you know. And so I took the role in giving a bass somehow. And as then people came and said, "Oh, Hannes is playing so nice, nicer even," and what I understood in the context that I'm giving the entrance, or I make it possible that they can take it.
In a previous conversation we had, you said to me that you didn't consider yourself a composer. What do you think you're doing, like musically?
Yeah, it's like all activity together is like way more diverse than only composing, you know? And as Lachemann once coined it, that nowadays composing is building an instrument, in that sense, I'm composing, and through playing on my concerts, I also have compositions or patterns and all kind of things I consider nice or beautiful, and as I said once, then try to one thing break it down or give the entrance to people, and that's composition in action. So it's but as society is giving roles like being composer, being musician, or being sculptor, or being that, my activity has so many parts of all that, you know. Like I work on the acoustics, how like the effect of sounds, connected to the medical purposes, sound art, geology, you name it, and that all together then brings me to being somewhere in between, you know, where surely like the society can like not give me that role what I actually also don't have. So and because these roles are giving and they are quite well defined and bring a lot of like how to say it's maybe some kind of responsibility or some actions you do. I never do the full kind of actions. So it's maybe not that I'm not giving me so much, it's more society's not giving me. And but still I'm doing sure I'm somehow doing composition, and as composition is also a creative process that's evolving. So also my compositional thinking is evolving, but I wouldn't consider myself only whatever sculptor or only because that is the role that you are given, and you're like put in that corner, and you should stand there, and that's not what I do. It's like an in between, a role of in between, of taking its experience or inspiration and working that in my activity.
You just mentioned the medical side of things. Can you just very broadly tell me how the stones are used in medical?
Yeah, a lot is evolving right now. What new research? What I'm not right now can't tell. But in physical medicine it plays a major role, and also in psychology there are quite some good effects. Like so you have the experience of new sounds, and also of the so-called dead matter, and what suddenly comes into movement, and that can be somehow then taken also to your life, that all what you somehow is so stiff, and suddenly there's movement, and you can accept that you can also move yourself. And in physical medicine you connect to a vibrating instrument, so that brings all your body, all the liquids in your body in movement. For example, the hemoglobin, the red blood cells, if you have no vibration, they glue together. And through vibration, what is the normal concept of life, you may say, that you can walk, every step is a small vibration. And when you become older, you can move less. So here, you don't need much energy to create vibration. You get it in your body, so your whole metabolism comes into movement. That's one thing.
So what are your plans for the future? The immediate future and the longer future?
There are so many concepts and plans. It very much depends on finance many times. As I move heavy stones and have a lot of logistic, and it all costs a whole lot of money, so it's always depends on how much can I finance, and how many hours of machines and so on. But there are quite some amazing concepts where how to get new sounds, and there are so many stones I haven't tried. What I'm planning to try, and some are very expensive, difficult to get. So sure, but one is to materialize all the ideas that are there, then to learn more about how it works, and to like somehow also in theory get slowly the place it deserves, and that it's developing in the right direction also. That it not too many bad stones, because there's also this what I experienced, that there are some stones you shouldn't use and some get used. So that some good sound sculptures are also developing, and that it's possible to somehow to, let's say, understand the frames or why it is like this, and go and sure, like science needs surely some more years to be able to explain some things, as that was always my problem, let's say, that I meet scientists in the field and they see it, but they can't really explain because it's knowledge of in a niche, let's say. And so I put my head and my eyes in some of the fields and found out why it's like this, and what are the let's say problem of whatever acoustic or so on, and then to fill that gaps, let's say, and then to be able to it's there's so many possibilities, let's say. And so that makes it a little bit difficult to decide what is like more important, and then you have always new things that come around the corner.
At what point would you be happy, like within the Stones recognition? Like at what point do you feel like the Stones had been accepted?
Also, somehow. I don't think there's a huge problem of that it won't be accepted. It's only a matter of time. Because what I experienced in the first place, many times the people don't understand. They put it in a certain corner of whatever sound bowl or but this is what I know very much a problem of not having had the real experience in time and space, in your presence right there. And if people have that, they understand it right away, and that can get also interested. And then, so it's, in my view, only a matter of time. And surely, sure, it depends also how, like theoretically, from the idea all around, how it's getting present. As sound can be considered like a powerful tool, because you play with perception, and that's probably also in ancient history what made sound so important, that it's something you can't see but you can control if you know how it works. So that gives you as a priesthood or as people also a lot of power, and that still somehow reflects nowadays as people try to somehow abuse it as their instruments for whatever their greed, their money making, or all kind of possibilities, and so that's more like my hope, that, and also probably also why I do it, that it doesn't happen too much, and that there's not so much blank space that opens up possibilities for abuse.